At 8:40 on a Miami to Washington boarding line, Flight 492 looked ready to leave. The first-class cabin was full, the jet bridge still locked, and the captain was waiting on clearance. Then the lead flight attendant checked Naomi Carter's C2A boarding pass and asked one question not written in the procedure. "Did you upgrade at the gate?" Carter stood there with a court folder and a worn briefcase. That small delay would decide what cabin authority really meant.
Ashley Monroe held out her hand. Boarding pass. Naomi Carter showed her phone. C2A. Ashley Monroe looked at the screen. First-class ticket. Booked 3 weeks ago. No special notes. She looked up at Naomi Carter one more time, her eyes lingering on the woman's shoes and the old leather bag. "Did you just upgrade at the gate?" Naomi Carter's voice was calm. "I booked this ticket in advance." Ashley Monroe handed the phone back. Naomi Carter walked to her seat, placed the briefcase under the seat in front of her, and set the tote bag on her lap. She took out her glasses and opened a file stamped in red with official court documents. Ashley Monroe leaned toward Brittany Collins, the other flight attendant. "Keep an eye on 2A. Brittany Collins nodded, saying nothing. Boarding was complete. The cabin door was closed. A fastened seatbelt sign lit up. The auxiliary power unit hummed steadily. Passengers settled into their seats. Ashley Monroe began her final check. She walked down the aisle, checking seatbelts, tray tables, overhead bins. When she got to row 2, she stopped. Naomi Carter had opened her tote bag and taken out a small pill bottle and a bottle of water. Her hands were steady. Not a tremor. "All personal items need to be stowed now." Naomi Carter looked up. "I need to take my heart medication first. We're about to push back from the gate. This will only take a second." A few passengers turned their heads to look. Arthur Bennett in seat 1B held his phone at chest level, the screen recording. Ashley Monroe gestured toward the tote bag. "Put it away. Now." Naomi Carter placed a pill under her tongue. She spoke slowly. "I will put it away when I'm finished." Ashley Monroe took one step closer. "If you don't follow instructions, I'll have to report you." Naomi Carter closed the pill bottle and put it back in her bag. She looked at the name tag on Ashley Monroe's uniform. "Your name tag is upside down." Ashley Monroe didn't fix it. "Sit down." Naomi Carter stood up from her seat, keeping her distance. "I need your full name." Ashley Monroe put a hand up to block her. "Sit down, or I will have you removed from the plane." Naomi Carter reached toward the name tag, not touching her. "Please provide your name." Ashley Monroe grabbed the strap of the tote bag. "Give it to me." Naomi Carter held on. The bag fits under the seat. A short tugging match took place between the two of them. No one was laughing. No one stepped in. Arthur Bennett held his camera steady. Ashley Monroe yanked hard. The bag ripped from Naomi Carter's hand. Her heel slipped on the seat track. Naomi Carter lost her balance and fell toward the aisle. Her glasses fell to the floor, slid a short way, and stopped near seat 1A. The cabin was silent. Not a single word was spoken. Ashley Monroe threw the tote bag into the overhead bin and slammed the door shut. "Sit down." Naomi Carter stayed on the floor for a few seconds. She picked up her glasses, checked that the lenses were intact. She got up, straightened her jacket, and said nothing. Arthur Bennett spoke up, his voice low but clear. "She didn't touch you." Ashley Monroe turned around. She wasn't following instructions. Captain Daniel Brooks opened the cockpit door when he heard the commotion. He looked down the aisle, saw Naomi Carter just getting to her feet, saw the glasses in her hand, saw the newly closed overhead bin. "What's going on?" Ashley Monroe's reply was short. "Non-compliant passenger." Naomi Carter stared straight ahead. "I just asked for her name." No one else spoke. The fasten seatbelt sign was still on. The plane was still at the gate. In the cabin, people still thought this was just an argument about stowing luggage, and no one understood yet that a line had been crossed. The plane was still at the gate. The fasten seatbelt sign was on. No one left their seat. Naomi Carter sat back down in seat 2A. The tote bag had been pulled down and placed at her feet. Her glasses were back on. The red file folder rested on her lap. Ashley Monroe stood in the forward galley, breathing heavily but trying to keep her posture straight. Brittany Collins was behind her, a hand on the edge of the jump seat. Arthur Bennett was still holding his phone. Captain Daniel Brooks took another step out of the cockpit. He looked from Naomi Carter to Ashley Monroe, then to a few passengers in the front. "Do we have a problem?" The passenger refused to comply with safety instructions. I took my medication and asked for her name. Captain Daniel Brooks looked at Naomi Carter for another second. "Is your bag stowed?" "The bag is under the seat." Captain Daniel Brooks looked down at the floor. The bag was under seat 2A. Nothing else was out. He turned to Ashley Monroe. "We're behind schedule." Ashley Monroe nodded. She stood up when she was told to sit. Arthur Bennett lowered his phone slightly. "I have it on video." Captain Daniel Brooks didn't react right away. He looked at his watch. Then he turned back to the cockpit, the door closing behind him. In the cockpit, First Officer Liam Turner looked at the screen showing the taxi clearance status. The words "hold position" were on the secondary display. There was no command to push back from the gate. Daniel Brooks sat down in the left seat. He put on his headset and contacted ground control. His voice wasn't tense. Just a short question about the hold status. Out in the cabin, Naomi Carter took her phone from her coat pocket. She opened her contacts and selected a saved number. Michael Hayes. "This is Naomi Carter. I'm on flight 492. I was just pushed down in the cabin." Ashley Monroe saw the phone. "Electronic devices need to be in airplane mode." Naomi Carter didn't look up. "The plane is still at the gate." Brittany Collins looked toward the galley as if waiting for instructions. No one approached Naomi Carter. In the cockpit, Daniel Brooks listened to the radio again. Ground control was asking to confirm hold position. No pushback order. He looked over at Liam Turner. "We're being held." Liam Turner looked at the screen. Still no clearance. In the cabin, Arthur Bennett pulled out his phone and sent a video. The person in seat 1A opened a laptop, typed a few short lines. No one was talking loud. Naomi Carter was still holding her phone. "I'm on official travel. I am requesting intervention." Ashley Monroe stood perfectly still, her hand on the frame of the jump seat. She looked toward the cockpit. No one in the cabin made any more announcements. 2 minutes went by. No sound from the main engines. No vibration of the plane getting ready to taxi. Captain Daniel Brooks opened the cockpit door again. He looked at Ashley Monroe. "We're not cleared to leave the gate." Ashley Monroe's reply was short. "It's because of this passenger." Naomi Carter ended her call. She put the phone down on her lap and breathed steadily. She didn't say anything else. A transmission from the ground came over the radio in the cockpit. Daniel Brooks listened. He nodded once, but didn't say anything to the cabin. Outside the window, an airport vehicle stopped near the nose of the plane. Then another one. No sirens. No excessive flashing lights. Ground crew stood by the jet bridge, looking up at the aircraft door. In the cabin, passengers started whispering to each other. Nobody got up. Brittany Collins backed toward the galley, holding an empty plastic tray. Arthur Bennett said, "Just loud enough to hear." I sent the video. Ashley Monroe turned to look at him, but didn't answer. The cockpit door opened a third time. Daniel Brooks stepped all the way out into the aisle. "We've been instructed to hold." "For how long?" "Until we receive further instructions." Naomi Carter stared straight ahead. She didn't turn to look at anyone. There was a metallic sound as the jet bridge was readjusted, connecting tighter to the aircraft door. The cabin shook a little. No one clapped. No one made a joke. Ashley Monroe stood up straighter and adjusted the name tag on her blouse. The tag was right side up now. She looked toward the front door. Through the window, you could see 3 black SUVs stop near the tip of the left wing. 2 airport police cars parked behind them. Security officers stood in a short line. In the cockpit, Daniel Brooks took another internal call from the airline. He only said one word to confirm. then hung up. The cabin stayed quiet. Naomi Carter opened the file folder on her lap again. She turned a page. Her hand rested flat on the edge of the paper. Ashley Monroe looked toward the aircraft door. Her hand wasn't on the jump seat anymore. Nobody in the cabin still thought this was just an argument about a carry-on bag. But nobody had said it out loud yet. Either. Outside, the cabin door started to open again. The cabin door opened all the way. 4 men stepped onto the plane. Dark vests, with thin body armor underneath. U.S. Marshals' service patches were clear on their chests. They didn't look at the passengers. They looked straight at the front galley. The man in front stopped in the middle of the aisle. "Who's the lead flight attendant?" Ashley Monroe took 1 step forward. "I am." "Confirm your full name." "Ashley Monroe." "Turn around." Ashley Monroe blinked. "There's been a mistake." "The passenger in seat 2A." "Turn around." "Put your hands behind your back." The cabin was silent. Brittany Collins pressed herself back against the galley wall. Arthur Bennett was holding his phone but didn't say a thing. The metal handcuffs clicked shut around Ashley Monroe's wrists. The sound was short and sharp. "You're under arrest for assaulting a federal officer in the performance of official duties." Ashley Monroe looked toward Captain Daniel Brooks. "Captain." Daniel Brooks didn't answer. He stood off to the side, hands clasped in front of him. Naomi Carter sat in seat 2A. Her tote bag was under the seat. A red folder was open on her lap. She didn't look toward the aisle. "You have the right to remain silent." Ashley Monroe was turned toward the door. Her steps slowed as she passed seat 2A. Naomi Carter turned a page in her folder. Said nothing. The cabin door opened wider. Ashley Monroe was escorted onto the jet bridge. No yelling. No one clapped. Captain Daniel Brooks turned back to the cabin. "We'll proceed when we're cleared to do so." Naomi Carter looked up. "I didn't request the flight be cancelled." Daniel Brooks nodded. "We're waiting for the paperwork to be completed." 20 minutes later, the jet bridge pulled away. The engines started. The plane pushed back from the gate. The flight to Washington, D.C. was nearly an hour late. That same evening, Ashley Monroe was notified of her termination. The union confirmed it would not represent her in a case involving federal criminal charges. 3 weeks later, the hearing took place at the federal courthouse in Miami. Ashley Monroe wore a pale orange jumpsuit. Her hands were no longer cuffed but were held in front of her. The public defender stood beside her. The prosecutor read the charge under Title 18. U.S. Code. Section 111. Assaulting a federal officer in the performance of her duties. An additional count of interfering with the safety of a flight crew. The judge asked simply, "How do you plead?" "Not guilty." Video from seat 1B was played. The image was clear. 2 hands shoving Naomi Carter in the chest. Naomi Carter stumbled back. Her heels slipped, and she fell into the aisle. The public defender asked for bail. The prosecutor requested a high bail amount, with the condition of restricted access to airports. Naomi Carter was asked for her statement. She stood up. "I am not requesting pretrial detention. I am requesting strict bail conditions." The judge nodded. Bail was set at $100,000. Passport surrendered. Banned from all airport facilities pending trial. Electronic home monitoring. Ashley Monroe looked down at the floor. 8 months later, a plea agreement was signed. The sentence was 18 months in prison. Time served would be credited. 3 years of probation upon release. Horizon Air and its insurance company sued for damages. The amount was more than she could pay. Ashley Monroe filed for Chapter 7 personal bankruptcy. Her apartment was foreclosed on. The car was repossessed. Her retirement account was liquidated to pay tax liabilities. Naomi Carter did not appear at the final sentencing. She sent a letter to the court, recommending against the maximum sentence. In the letter, she wrote that the purpose of the law is to correct behavior, not just to punish. 3 months after the sentencing, at Reagan National Airport, Naomi Carter was waiting for a flight to London, a seat near the departure gate. Her tote bag was on her lap. A folder was already open. A passenger ahead of her was arguing with the gate agent about the boarding order. Naomi Carter placed a hand on the counter. "We're all getting on the same plane." The man looked at her for a few seconds, then stepped back. The gate agent went back to scanning tickets. Naomi Carter walked down the jet bridge. Seat 2A. She put her bag under the seat before anyone had to tell her. The plane took off on time.
Power in a cabin is not just a badge, a uniform, or a command. It is a procedure that must be used carefully, especially when someone has already complied. One missed step can turn a routine flight into a record no one can erase. If you were sitting in that first-class cabin, would you have stayed silent, recorded, or asked the crew to check the facts before moving forward? Leave your answer below. This story is fictional. The characters, events, and setting were created for storytelling, education, and reflection. Any resemblance to real people or real events is purely coincidental.